Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies. That's right, initiates. You know where you are, you know who we are, because you just heard the intro. But why are we here? Well, there's been some developments in the Epstein case, and Neil spent the past few days going over the papers, going over the files, looking to see what actually is going on. So, Neil, take it away, man. Tell us what's going on.
Well, what's happened is that certain documents have been unsealed from a 2015 civil lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell and against Jeffrey Epstein that was brought by Virginia Roberts, latterly known as Virginia Giuffre. And she was the person that was picked up at Mar-a-Lago as an underage teen and then inducted into Jeffrey Epstein's circle as his private masseuse and sex slave. And she claims, along with a couple of girls, that she was used as a sex slave, not only for Jeffrey, but also that he could have handed her out to certain wealthy people. She's mentioned a very well-known prince of the realm. She's also said two well-known politicians, and she's named them. She's also named a couple of scientists, and she's referred to two well-known prime ministers, but she's never actually named these people. And so what this is, everybody got very excited because they felt that this was the client list. Now, just to explain what the client list is, Jeffrey Epstein was a very, very wealthy man, and he seemed to have a cadre of girls that were trafficked to him either by friends of these girls, by the girls themselves, who all sort of got into this sort of, they were paid $200 to provide young girls for him, and the boyfriends of some of these girls that were actually being sexually used by Jeffrey Epstein. And what has been suggested over the years is that potentially he might be connected to intelligence agencies. In 2005, he was arrested for sexually abusing young girls who he'd hired as masseuses, and these were very young teenage girls. What happened was he was convicted of it, but it was very, very quickly overturned. In 2008, he was basically given what was called a sweetheart deal by a gentleman called Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta said that the reason that he gave him this sweetheart deal, which basically resulted in almost no jail time and latterly being able to be taken off the child sex offenders register, was because, and I quote, he's intelligent and this is above my pay grade. Now, in the 1990s, there was a lady called Christine Di Nicola, and she received a presidential apology from Bill Clinton, who was the president at the time. And this was because she claimed, as part of MK-Ultra, which was the American mind control program, that she, as a child of 9 years old, was trained to be essentially a prostitute at a place called Deep Creek Cabins in Maryland. And the reason, or that she was told, was that she would be used as like a honey trap. So she'd be used for sexual encounters with prominent businessmen or politicians. These would be surreptitiously filmed, and then that film would be used as blackmail. Now, in 2011, when all this was coming out about Alex Acosta giving him the sweetheart deal, it was reported in certain newspapers that his Palm Beach property and his New York apartment were wired for sound, by which I mean that there was hidden cameras in bedrooms. And the inference was strongly given that he might have been recording people in a similar manner. Now, it must be stressed that no actual blackmail victim has come forward, and none of the girls have said that is what was happening. But it's not too much of a stretch to think that particular thing might be happening, particularly when you look at the number of connections that Epstein has to intelligence agencies, including Mossad and the CIA. This is all discussed at length in our full deep dive, so if people want to know the details, go and please listen to our Did Epstein Kill Himself podcast. So the client list, what people thought that this documentation was going to be list of people that he had either blackmailed and or sold girls to. And that's not what it is at all. And this is for a number of reasons. What these documents are is people that were named in the original criminal investigation going from 2005 onwards, and then Virginia Roberts' as civil suit in 2015. And so these people are accusers, members of staff, witnesses, people mentioned in depositions, and people involved in the investigation. And this isn't the first time that these documents have come out. The series came out in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. So they've been slowly releasing these as the judge has found that basically there's no furtherance of the investigation, and knowing these names, which were originally redacted, is not going to cause harm to them, because there is no suggestion that the people mentioned in this have actually done any crimes that we don't know about. These are just people that were caught up. It paints a very interesting picture, but it's not what people were expecting. Now, there is another reason that there isn't going to be a client list.
Now, is that kind of similar to like the flight logs and the little black book always being referenced as the client list?
Yeah, precisely, because that is the point. There is a mashing together in the common understanding of it that the little black book is a list of people that were involved in sex trafficking. And it isn't. It's just an address book. Now, it's a very fascinating address book. There's lots of people, prominent people in there, like Toby Young and Donald Trump and John Mappin and various other people that you would know about. In fact, Donald Trump's name is circled in there. However, also in there is a local pizza parlor and the dry cleaners that they used. And furthermore, this book didn't actually belong to Jeffrey. It's Ghislaine's. Now, you could make the argument that Ghislaine is essentially his PA, and so it's all part of their world. But regardless, it is simply an address book. Now, the flight logs is another thing, because Jeffrey had this plane called the Lolita Express, and he also had an island called Little St. John, which he called Little St. Jeff, Little St. James, which he called Little St. Jeff. And that's where he would go with a cadre of young girls, and people in the Virgin Isles knew this place as basically, they called it Paedophile Island. Like, it was not a secret that they were taking girls there, and some of these girls were incredibly young. So that's what has come out. And it's left a lot of people very disappointed, because they wanted hard evidence of blackmail, hard evidence of celebrities being caught up in sex parties and stuff like that. And whilst there's a couple of salacious rumours coming out of it, the majority of the information is stuff that we've known before, to be quite honest. There is a trope as well that says, where are these clients? Because obviously Ghislaine was convicted for trafficking girls, and people say, oh, the only person on the planet that's ever been convicted of trafficking to nobody. And what this implies is that there was a cover-up, that the people that she was trafficking the girls to, the courts have decided to hide their names. That's not what Ghislaine was convicted for, nor what Jeffrey was arrested for when he died in custody. They were arrested for trafficking girls to themselves. They are the clients that they are supplying to. That is a thing. They've trafficked girls. What trafficking girls means is that they've moved them around for the purposes of sex, with Jeffrey and with Ghislaine. And that's what she was arrested for, and that's what she was convicted for. So that's why there was no list of people that came out, because that's not what she was arrested for. However, several girls have said that they were given to other people, but that has never been really investigated further. But let's just go through what was discovered and see who was named in it. So, who are the names? There's apparently 170 names that were released, and these are people that basically, as we say, were mentioned in depositions by Virginia Roberts, by Joanna Soberg, who was also a victim, by Virginia Roberts's boyfriend, by Juan Alessi, who was the housekeeper, and various other people who were questioned during the investigations into both the 2005 and the later sexual abuse cases. Now, the most salacious thing that comes out of it is more knowledge about Prince Andrew. Now, Prince Andrew was famously photographed at Ghislaine Maxwell's London home with his arm around the then 17-year-old Virginia Roberts. And Virginia Roberts said that she was forced to sleep with the prince. He denied this. He went on a BBC Newsnight programme and categorically denied it, even giving the excuse that her description of him was incorrect because she described him as sweating, and he claims that he can't sweat due to an accident that happened to him during the Falklands War, although there's numerous pictures of him after the Falklands War sweating up a storm. So take from that what you will. Now, in the depositions, the girl referred to is Jane Doe number 3, and this is Virginia Roberts. And what she said is that basically she was instructed by Ghislaine to have sex with Prince Andrew on Little St. James. So this is another incident that we didn't know of. We knew that he was alleged to have slept with her in London. It has now come out that basically he was alleged to be part of an orgy with underage girls on the island owned by Jeffrey. And another girl, Joanna Schoberg, she claims that Prince Andrew groped her breasts whilst he was playing with a spitting image doll of himself. Spitting Image is a satirical show that uses puppets to lambast members of Parliament, the royal family, and celebrities. And he somehow got hold of his puppet that is representative of him, and he sat the puppet on his knee, and he was sort of groping the girl with his hands and with the puppet's hands, and they all had a huge laugh about it. And the other revelation is that Prince Andrew apparently stayed in Palm Beach for weeks at a time, and when he was there he would receive daily massages from young girls. And this came from Juan Alessi, who is the housekeeper who worked for Jeffrey Epstein for many years. So it looks pretty bad for Prince Andrew, because he kind of was starting to sort of get himself back into the public eye and whatnot, and rehabilitate his image. And now it's come out that basically he's been accused of being involved in an orgy. So yet another incidence of potentially having sex with underage girls. The second prominent person that was named there was Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton has long been associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and he has been a target for a lot of people because they're desperate to find out that he's done something illegal. And if he has done something illegal, he should be thrown in prison. Now, Joanna Schoberg says that she was told by Jeffrey Epstein in a passing conversation that Clinton likes his girls young. So this is what Joanna Schoberg said in the deposition. She said Jeffrey Epstein had bragged to her about his friendship with Bill Clinton and said that Bill Clinton liked them young, referring to young girls. Virginia Giuffre, also in the deposition, said that she saw Bill Clinton at Little St. James on 2 different occasions. She didn't massage him, she didn't have sex with him, she didn't see him having sex or being massaged by anybody, but she claims to have seen him at the island twice. Now, Clinton denies this, and his evidence that this is not true is, well, I go everywhere with the Secret Service, and if there's no record of the Secret Service being there, then I couldn't have been there, which, let's be honest, is nonsense, because you just would not write the names down. That lack of evidence does not preclude the fact that you might have been on the island. And another claim came out that basically said Virginia Giuffre Roberts claimed that Clinton had gone to Vanity Fair magazine and threatened them to stop writing stories about his good friend Jeffrey Epstein. And apparently he threatened a journalist with repercussions if they didn't stop this in 2011. However, Vanity Fair categorically deny this. So whether this was true, whether it was a mistaken identity, we simply don't know. And that's one of the things that must be taken about all of these things, is we don't actually know the provenance or the accuracy of these things. You've got to remember that these girls, this was 20 years ago, these girls were very, very young. They were plied with all sorts of drugs like Xanax, which obviously impairs memory and makes things very, very strange at the time. So you'd be forgiven for making errors.
And I guess at the end of the day, if it's like, it could all be hearsay. I mean, we don't really know.
No, absolutely.
But let's listen to what's being said.
What's being said, absolutely, but we have to take it sometimes with a grain of salt and basically not rush into the wanting it to be more than it is, because obviously everybody thinks, we want to uncover a crime, and if people like Donald Trump or people like Bill Clinton or people like Bill Gates or whoever have been exploiting young children, then they should be punished for it.
Absolutely. And like we've said, like in our episode about Jeffrey Epstein, this man is a monster. There is no covering up his crimes. We just want to know what they actually were.
Yes, precisely. Now, Donald Trump. Now, a lot of people have jumped on this and said that Donald Trump has been completely exonerated by this, which is just simply not true. What's happened is that there was a passage came out where Virginia Giuffre was asked if she'd ever seen Donald Trump on the island. And she said no, categorically no. Never seen him on the island, never given him a massage, never actually even come into contact with him. And people have taken that to be, well, that shows that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. And this forgets several things. The first one is that Virginia Roberts was hired by Ghislaine Maxwell, who's a good friend of Donald Trump, from working at the cloakroom at Mar-a-Lago, which is his club. That's where she was introduced to the Jeffrey Epstein circle. Also, Joanna Schoberg said that they were flying to New York on Epstein's plane, the famous Lolita Express, and it was due to weather, they were diverted to Atlantic City. At the time, Donald Trump had a casino in Atlantic City, and apparently Jeffrey Epstein was like, great, we're going to Atlantic City. Phone Trump, we're going to his casino, because they were good friends at the time. Also, excuse me, Mark Epstein, who's the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, said in the New York Post, and I quote, he said, Jeffrey told me if I said what I knew about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election. And that's what Jeffrey told me in 2016. And so he's referring to both Donald Trump and Bill Clinton at that point, which is fascinating.
Wait, don't you mean Hillary Clinton?
No, absolutely. But the crimes of Bill Clinton is what is inferred would be so sensational that would ruin Hillary's chances, and the crimes of Donald Trump himself would be so sensational that would ruin his chances.
Yeah, I've seen many conspiracists posting about it, saying, see, this means Frazzle Drip is real.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything.
Because he's obviously referring to Hillary.
We don't know what he's referring to because we don't know what it was. He could also have been talking rubbish. He could have been bigging himself up to his brother and lying. We just don't know. But it is fascinating that apparently he said he had enough dirt on both candidates to completely derail the 2016 election, which, fascinating if true. Also, Joanna Lessie, who is the housekeeper for Jeffrey Epstein, she said that Donald Trump would regularly stop over at Jeffrey's Palm Beach residence for dinner. But often he would actually eat in the kitchen with her rather than in the dining room for whatever reason. And she says that she never saw Donald Trump have a massage anywhere around around Jeffrey Epstein, but that he wouldn't because he had his own spa where he would be able to get massages from. So again, take from that what you will, really. The next person that has been sort of bandied around is Stephen Hawking. Now, Stephen Hawking was pictured on the island in 2006, and this is because there was a conference on gravity that was set up on a neighbouring island, St. Thomas, by Epstein. Epstein was fascinated with science and put huge amounts of money into Harvard and put huge amounts of money into his own scientific sort of studies. And this is why people from MIT and various prominent scientists have been sort of pictured in his orbit. Now, in the deposition, there is an email exchange where Epstein is asking Ghislaine, do we know any of Virginia Roberts' friends who could quash a rumour for us? And apparently what happened is Virginia Roberts had said that she was aware that Stephen Hawking was at an orgy on the island that involved young girls. Now, the email is Jeffrey saying, do we know anybody that can basically kibosh this? Do we know any of Virginia's friends that can prove that this accusation is false? What does that mean? Does that mean that he's telling the truth and that he wants to clear Stephen Hawking's name? Or does that mean that he's trying to cover it up? we simply don't know. However, what we do know is that there's a meme going around that is purportedly from this deposition, and it says that, forgive the language, that Stephen Hawking liked watching naked midgets doing complicated equations on an elevated platform. So he would be sat below them, watching them doing equations naked on a blackboard. It's not true. It's just an internet thing that was totally made up.
I saw someone else posting about this.
Well, this is the thing, like, and this is why it's so sort of vital to sort of like to separate what's real and what's not real from it. But that is not a true rumor, apparently. David Copperfield, the magician. Joanna Schoberg said that he was at dinner at Epstein's home and that he did magic tricks. Now, what is curious about this is, according to Joanna, he kind of cornered her, David Copperfield did, not in a sinister way, and said to her, do you know that all the other girls at this party are basically they're being paid to find other girls? He had picked up that the whole party was full of young girls, and they were basically getting $200 a head to find other girls to bring to the party. And for whatever reason, David Copperfield found this to be unsettling, and so he mentioned it to Joanna Schoberg, and then she relayed this in one of her testimonies. She also claims that Michael Jackson was present at Epstein's Palm Beach home. On one occasion, she says she saw Michael Jackson there. I'm not entirely sure whether he was performing or whether he was just there. And again, there's no inference that any of these people did anything wrong. They're just mentioned as being in the orbit of these people. Tom Pritzker. Tom Pritzker is a US billionaire. Now, this was already known, but basically in her deposition, Virginia Roberts said that she was farmed out to this man and asked to sleep with him on behalf of Jeffrey and Ghislaine. Alan Dershowitz. Virginia Roberts also claimed that she slept with him. She claims that he slept with various other young underage girls, and also that he was a witness to other minors being abused. Now, this is a strange one because basically Alan Dershowitz countersued Virginia Roberts and she retracted her claim. So in current standing, those accusations are not in the public domain. She recanted those. And what Alan Dershowitz said is, oh, she clearly mistook me for somebody else. She misidentified me. It's an interesting one because Alan Dershowitz was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, particularly in the 2005 case. And as we discuss in our deep dive, one of the things that he did in order to try and protect his client was trawl the MySpace and social media of these girls, who were 14 at the time, and tried to paint them as drug-addicted, promiscuous little tarts that basically were throwing themselves at older rich men in order to basically make Jeffrey Epstein seem less culpable, which is a despicable thing to do. Again, take from that what you will. Frederick Fekkai is apparently a celebrity hairdresser. I'd never heard of this person myself, but apparently Joanna Schoberg heard Epstein on the phone mention his name. He said, "Oh, Frederick Fekkai is in Hawaii. Can we get some girls for him?" And this is what Joanna Schoberg overheard. What that means, whether that's for sex, whether that's it could be for something quite legitimate, like I'm doing a hair expose or something like that. Yeah, I need models to be candidates that I can show my skills off on and stuff like that. But regardless, that is how he was brought up. Leslie Wexner. Leslie Wexner is the owner of Victoria's Secrets, and very early in his career, despite not really being qualified, he was basically put Jeffrey Epstein in charge of all of his finances. So Jeffrey Epstein was almost like his sort of personal accountant, and he made a huge amount of money from Les Wexner. It's never been quite explained why this happened, but he's basically mentioned in depositions, as is his wife, who apparently phoned Epstein a couple of times, wanting to speak to him about something important, but we don't know what it is. Also, Ghislaine was asked during her civil trial, Had she ever provided women for Leslie Wexner? The rumor was that she provided girls in bikinis to him, and she said, no, that's not true. It's strictly not true. I've never done anything like that at all. Glenn Dubin. Glenn Dubin is a US hedge fund manager, and similar to other people, Virginia claimed to have slept with him, but he denies this. Jean-Luc Brunel. Jean-Luc Brunel is another fashion mogul who was also convicted or accused of trafficking women. But before he went to trial, he hung himself in prison, very similar to Jeffrey Epstein. Virginia Roberts claims that she was told to sleep with him by Ghislaine. Bill Richardson was a US politician and the governor of New Mexico. And similarly, Virginia Roberts claims in her deposition that she was asked to sleep with him by Ghislaine. Marvin Minsky is a professor and the co-founder of MIT. Now, again, he was involved with Epstein due to his sort of, his patronizing of various science things, and has been pictured on the island. In fact, I think he was pictured in the same time that Hawkins was there. However, again, Virginia Roberts claims to have slept with him. He's died, so was unable to deny this. Ehud Barak, who is the former Israeli prime minister, who's known to have met Epstein many times. Now, this is one of the strange connections that Epstein seems to have to Israeli intelligence that we discuss at length in our deep dive. Joanna Schoberg was asked if she'd ever met Barak, and she said no, that she hadn't. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey flew on the Lolita Express. This is widely known. He didn't go to the island, and there's no suggestion that he did anything wrong. Joanna Schoberg was asked if she'd ever met Kevin Spacey, and she said no, she hadn't. Al Gore. Al Gore might have flown on the Lolita Express. We don't know this, and she was photographed with Virginia Roberts. He was photographed with Virginia Roberts, and this came up in the deposition, although there is absolutely no evidence that he's done anything wrong, and nobody suggested that he has. George Lucas of Star Wars fame. Now, Schoberg was basically asked if she'd ever given a massage to George Lucas, and she said, not only have I never given a massage to George Lucas, but I've never even met him. And this basically comes off the back of a lot of speculation. Obviously, when this started to come into the public eye, the internets, all sorts of people were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. There's all sorts of city lists and people who visited the island list, and all of them are nonsense, basically.
I'm getting a little theme here of it doesn't seem to be the girls mentioning many names. They seem to be asked by someone else. So is that lawyers or what?
Yeah, these are lawyers basically saying, we've heard this rumor. Have you seen? For example, Leonardo DiCaprio, Cate Blanchett, Cameron Diaz, and Bruce Willis were all mentioned in the deposition. None of the girls have ever met any of these people. None of the girls have ever been in close contact with these people. What they said was Jeffrey would often be on the phone chatting away, and then he'd hang up and go, you'll never guess who that was. I've just been chatting to Leonardo DiCaprio. I've just been chatting to Bruce Willis. I've been chatting to Cameron Diaz and Cate Blanchett. Whether he was telling the truth, nobody knows. What could be the case is that he's basically just trying to impress these 17-year-old girls that he's basically getting a massage from. But there's no suggestion that any of these people have done anything wrong. And I think at least a couple of them, I think Cameron Diaz has already come out and said, I've never spoken to him in my life. So,
Okay.
Again,
Yeah.
Naomi Campbell was also brought up because there is a picture of Virginia Roberts and Jeffrey Epstein at what appears to be some sort of event. Like, it seems they're all dressed, it's high society, some sort of fashion event or whatever. And they're not pictured together, but they're pictured in the vicinity of one another. And so in her deposition, Joanna Schoberg was asked if she'd ever met Naomi Campbell, and she said no, she'd never met him. Sarah Ferguson. This is, the former Fergie, the former wife of Prince Andrew. According to Epstein's housekeeper, Joanna Lessie, she testified that she'd visited Epstein's New York mansion with Prince Andrew on a number of occasions. Now, we know that Prince Andrew was trying to secure a loan of $15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein to Sarah Ferguson in order to pay off certain debts that she had. And this is discussed further in our deep dive. Chris Tucker, the comedian, is mentioned because he flew on the Lolita Express going to Africa for a charity organisation one time. And Harvey Weinstein, as mentioned, because apparently he called the Epsteins home in 2005. And so that's the names that have been put out thus far. So there's really nothing that salacious. There's the suggestion that Clinton might have pressured the Vanity Fair, but that is denied by Vanity Fair. The most damaging is the revelations about Prince Andrew. Because if he's trying to rehabilitate his public persona, the idea that he might have been involved in yet another sexual tryst with underage girls, it's just, I think, is going to be far too much for the public. Is he going to get prosecuted for it? Is anything going to happen for it? No, I don't think it's going to. But I think that it's death to his public persona, to be quite honest. Now, the other thing that's come out of this is that a lot of right-wing people, Alex Jones particularly, and various other people connected to it, have desperately tried to show that this shows that Donald Trump is exonerated from any connection to Jeffrey Epstein at all. And this just isn't the case. And so we're very briefly going to go over why that's really not fair. I mean, for a start, Virginia Roberts was working at Mar-a-Lago when she was groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell. And that's just an indisputable fact. Ghislaine, Jeffrey, and Trump have been friends for years. In fact, in the early 2000s, Trump said in, I believe it was Vanity Fair magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy, he's a lot of fun to be with." And it's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them, they're on the younger side, but there's no doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life. Now, if you want to take this further, Donald Trump's modelling agency has been accused on several occasions of trafficking women from Europe, particularly underage women. And Trump himself has been accused in a civil suit of attempted rape and was found guilty in that civil suit of sexual assault, not rape. But that's not really anything to be bragged about. That the conclusion came because it's widely known in the public life that Donald Trump has got a small penis, and so the defendant could not tell whether she was digitally or penetrated, or it was Donald Trump's very small penis. So it's not really the win that he thinks it is. Anyway, he was also known to hang around women's dressing rooms and beauty pageants, and he's also been accused of rape by his ex-wife. So, not a great guy. Trump, Epstein, and a gentleman called Tom Barrack, who was actually great friends with Jeffrey Epstein right up until his death, were known in New York in the 80s and 90s as the Three Musketeers. And essentially, they would go around and just try and run through as many young models as was physically possible. There's also video of Donald Trump in the early 90s, clearly on some sort of stimulant, dancing with Epstein, pointing at girls and going, "She's hot, she's hot." Also, Epstein and Trump were accused by a plaintiff called Katie Johnston of raping her when she was just 13. This is a very, very dodgy case. The way that it was brought about was by people who have an absolute axe to grind against Donald Trump, and the case was dropped at the last minute. Some say due to harassment of the witness, some say due to the fact that basically it didn't really have many legs to it. But it's certainly something to consider. Donald Trump also said that if his own daughter was not his daughter, he'd probably be dating her and would have slept with her by now, which is, let's be honest, a little odd. Trump is also friends with 5 paedophiles, known paedophiles, one being Jeffrey Epstein, who he's known for many, many years. Another one being George Nader, who in 1985 bought child porn from Holland. In 1991, got caught with child porn from Germany and sentenced to 6 months. In 2003, abused 10 boys and was given a year in prison. In 2018, was found with child porn on his laptop during the Mueller investigation. In 2019, George Nader transported a boy of 14 from Europe to America, and in 2020, he was convicted and given 10 years for possession of child pornography and transporting a minor. Donald Trump also was friends with Roy Cohn. In fact, Roy Cohn was his mentor. Roy Cohn was known to like young, beautiful boys. And according to attorney John Klotz, he provided protection for a paedophile ring that was out of the Plaza Hotel in New York, specifically room 233. Now, John Klotz, the attorney, said that he wasn't able to pursue this because the ring had connections to the intelligence community. Donald Trump is also friends with Tevfik Arif, who was raided by the FBI for smuggling girls into Turkey for prostitution, although, in fairness, the charges were dropped. And he was also friends with John Casablancas. John Casablancas is another fashion mogul, and the father of Julian Casablancas, the lead singer of The Strokes. He was the manager to Ivanka Trump when she was only 13. And he's known for his relationships with very, very young girls. He's been accused by sexual assault by many, many people. When he was 14, he apparently molested a 15-year-old Stephanie Seymour. And when he was 50, he married a 17-year-old girl. Bill Barr was instrumental in getting Jeffrey Epstein his first job. He was completely unqualified for it and was given a job as a teacher at the very, very prominent and prestigious Dalton School in New York. Bill Barr was later inducted into the Trump administration and I believe was the district attorney. Alex Acosta was the person who in 2008 helped Epstein sidestep various charges of sleeping with underage girls and paedophilia. But basically, he gave him a sweetheart deal. He says, it's because Epstein was connected to intelligence and it was above my pay grade. And Alex Acosta was also welcomed into the Trump administration. In the year 2000, journalist Michael Coracon saw Epstein and a young girl with Trump on Trump's private jet. So what people will tell you is that Donald Trump basically fell out with Jeffrey Epstein. He fell out with him and he provided evidence against him in the first court case. Now, that's kind of true. What people say, though, is that he fell out because he found out that A, Epstein was a paedophile, and B, that he was trying it on with the daughter of one of Trump's close friends. What actually happened was they fell out because they were both going for a Palm Beach property and Epstein was able to provide more money. And so he beat Trump to the property. That's why they fell out. Trump did testify during the first case, but he did it remotely. He got a deal with the prosecution and the police that said, I'll provide evidence so long as basically it's done on a sort of hush-hush under the table sort of way. So he didn't testify against him in any sort of meaningful way. He kind of basically tried to wash his hands of the entire thing. However, Trump was also known to call Epstein's house up until at least 2004. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell was actually interviewed on 60 Minutes in 2016, and she was asked if there was a tape of Trump. And she was kind of tricked by the journalist because what she did was she turned around and she goes, I'm not showing you the tape of Trump. Because if I have to show you the tape of Trump, I'll have to show you the tape of Clinton as well. So what she implied was that she had a blackmail tape of both Trump and Clinton. She later clarified and says, I don't have access to these tapes. Jeffrey had them. I don't know where they are. But the way that she was questioned intimated that these two tapes existed or potentially existed. Now, further to the rumor that Trump and Epstein fell out. Because Epstein hit on a young girl at Mar-a-Lago, and so Donald Trump wanted nothing more to do with him. This is the sort of cover story, the narrative that's put out, particularly by the right wing. This is not the flex that they think it is, because this means two things. One, Trump knew that Epstein was a paedophile and kept it quiet for 20 years. And two, he didn't mind that he was a paedophile. It was only when it was somebody that was close to his orbit, the daughter of one of his friends, that was the tipping point. Both of those things make Trump a terrible person. So that's not the flex that people think it is. That is not the exoneration by any stretch of the imagination. So that is, there's also the fashion connection, which is basically like Jean-Luc Brunel. He founded MC2 modeling agency with money from Epstein, and basically Gouffre said that this was all for trafficking girls. Peter Nygaard is a fashion mogul as well. His offices are in New York, and he was accused of trafficking girls to the Bahamas in a case strikingly similar to Epstein. And so it would appear that this New York fashion industry has a problem with underage girls and a problem with underage girls being trafficked and exploited. And Trump was knee-deep in that.
So what are we taking away from this? Because all I can take away from it so far is that this is not a list.
No, it's not.
Just like the Black Book and just like the flight logs, it's not exactly a list of clients. And a lot of the times it's people who are mentioned either by the questioner or they're pretty much not implicated in any actual crimes.
Absolutely.
Other than the people who have already kind of been covered.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's no revelations, really. There's a couple of more salacious details, but none of it is proven. And here's the thing, right? Just because this has only been released to the public now, this has been in the judge's hands for years. So if there was any further crime or further evidence of crime or anything that could be pursued from these defamations, it would have been.
Right, yeah.
So the idea that basically what's going to happen is going to release a list of people and basically the FBI is going to have to go and, like, you know, topple this paedophile ring. It's not going to happen. That's not what this is about at all.
I also saw that every person mentioned, or, you know, every person's name who's been unveiled, was approached to ask if, like, they had any objections to their names being out. So
precisely,
that's another interesting thing.
Yeah, and there's 3 names that basically apparently are still redacted. But from what I could see, these are victims that just didn't want their name in the public eye.
Right.
So that's what the Epstein files are about. People have tried to spin it to be more sensational or to show that it exonerates certain people or proves that certain people have done wrong. But realistically, there's nothing here that wasn't already known prior to the release of the papers. It's a very interesting insight to the behind the scenes, and it fleshes out the narrative, so to speak. But it doesn't really offer anything that new.
Cool. Well, I hope that clears everything up for people, and we should just continue to keep our eye on what's going on, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, crimes have obviously been committed. That's not debated, is it? But there is a danger with these types of things to want to fill in the gaps. And you have to just be a bit careful about that, because otherwise, as is always the problem with conspiracies, you start to create truisms, things that we kind of assume we know. And if we know this, then this must be the case. And if this is the case, then that must be the case. And this is how you basically can end up spiraling away from the reality of things and essentially inventing a narrative that serves other purposes.
Thank you for listening to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy. Follow us on Twitter at Some Dare Podcast for all the latest from us. And if you want to support us, please consider joining us on patreon.com/somedarecallitconspiracy. You'll be able to get early access to episodes, including each full deep dive series on day 1, and exclusive Patreon-only episodes. When you subscribe to our Initiate tier for a $5 or our Handler tier for a $10, you'll get a welcome pack of 4 of Neil's books, 8 of my albums and EPs, and a PDF of Headache Comics 4, courtesy of Nicholas C. Gray. And to our first Patreons, thank you so much for your support from the both of us at Some Dare Call It Conspiracy.